It's the ultimate battle between grain mills. You may be actually looking into purchasing a grain mill, but really unsure of whether you should go with an impact grain mill or one of the stone grind grain mills. Those are the two main categories of grain mills. Now, I've already done videos all about helping you choose what grain mill to buy, but in this video, we're actually going to be testing them out side by side. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you how to be milling your wheat, baking that delicious bread, and more. So as I stated, I've done videos about how to choose a grain mill, the importance of grain mills, all of those type of things. But I still get comments from y'all asking me to actually test them out side by side. There are actually three main tests that I get questions about. And in this video, we're going to be duking it out and actually running these grain mills through those tests. So here's what we're going to be doing today. First of all, I'm going to do a quick rundown of the difference between impact grain mills, what are the most common ones, and stone grind mills, what are the most common ones of those. And then we're actually going to get to the testing. And there are three elements that we are going to be testing these mills. One is noise level. I have received so many comments asking people to actually hear what these grain mills sound like. The second test that we are going to be doing is the speed. How fast do these grain mills grind grains? We're just going to be testing out specifically wheat today. That's the most common grain that I know I mill. So we're going to be testing out the speed of that, and combined with number three, and that is testing the temperature of the flour after it is ground. And then we're going to conclude with which grain mill I actually prefer to be using. And the answer may surprise you a little bit. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about really quick rundown, the difference between impact and stone grind grain mills. These are the two main categories of grain mills as far as electric grain mills go. Outside of this, you have your manual grain mills, which is a whole different category all on its own. I'm also aware of attachments to things like your KitchenAid, those grain mill attachments to a KitchenAid or mixer. Just know that those are typically, from what I've heard, I've never tried them before, but typically they are not the best for people who are really going to be doing this a lot. I think those might be fine if you are occasionally grinding grains into flour, but they're not as powerful as a standalone grain mill. I've been told that they're pretty loud, that they're slow, they may not grind as fine, and for the price, I actually say go ahead and save up a little bit more to get you a standalone grain mill, because I do believe that that's going to last much longer than those attachments. So that's kind of a whole different category, but I have no experience with those. Just really quick, my rundown with that. All right, so first of all, we have our impact grain mills. So the most common brands of impact grain mills is the wondermill Classic, the wondermill, which is what you see here, and then also the wondermill Impact grain mill. And some of these I've done full reviews on. Any videos that I have about grain mills, I will be sure to link it for y'all in the description box below. But basically, wondermill and wondermill are the most common brands when it comes to the impact grain mills. And what makes them an impact grain mill is how the grains are ground into flour. And what it is basically they have steel burrs inside that whir around super, super fast. And when the grain comes in contact with it, they basically burst, or because of the impact. And that's where you get your fine flour from. Is basically it's going so fast when it impacts, it bursts. So that's why they're called impact grain mills. The other great thing about impact grain mills is they will get you basically fine flour every single time with a simple push of the button. They are actually very easy to use, very user-friendly, but there is no getting coarse grains with your impact grain mills. They're really only going to give you fine flour perfect for your bread baking, making cookies, cakes, those type of things. Contrast to your stone grind mills. The most common brands are what you see here is the wondermill Harvest stone grind mill. There's also the Como mill and the mock mill. Those are kind of the most common brands that people go with. And what makes them stone grind mills is, as the name implies, they're actually basically millstones inside. So you may have heard of, for thousands of years, people, like the basic way of grinding grains was millstone, some sort of millstone where you have two stones that are grinding together to make your fine flour. Well, thanks to modern electricity, we have now electrified that method and made it much smaller than having a mule go around a millstone or to have it powered by water. So inside of here, there are actually two stones on top of each other that grind together to make your flour. So the advantage of the stone grain mills is that you have the option of cracked grains all the way to fine flour and everywhere in between. So if you need the ability to grind coarser grains, you're going to want to stick with your stone grind mills. Now, in saying that, you have to manually adjust those stones to get whatever coarseness or fineness that you are wanting. All right, so that's a quick rundown between the basic differences and as far as how grains are ground in these two different mills. Now, beyond that, you have what they look like, the space they take up, so on and so forth. So now that we've run through that, time for some testing. Hey, before we actually get to the testing, I have some exciting news for you, and that is introducing the sponsor for today's video, which is actually Grand Teton Ancient Grains. I am super excited about partnering up with them. Now, as much as I love my modern grains that we have, and I'm thankful for them, there's nothing quite like going back to the original ancient grains, knowing that these were the grains that our ancestors consumed, Jesus himself probably consumed, and my favorite ancient grains definitely right now are ones like einkorn and korzon. Fun facts about them is we basically have them to thank for actually bringing our favorite ancient grains like einkorn to the United States. And again, they are pioneers when it comes to having access to ancient grains. I mean, their website is ancientgrains.com. On top of that, I love that I can get a variety of ancient grains straight from the farmer. They are organic grains and they are super passionate about taking care of their soil, and they thoroughly make sure that they test their wheat berries for toxins, making sure they are super clean grains, which they are. And every time I've used them, the quality has been excellent, and I thoroughly believe that you're gonna love it too. So if you're wanting premium ancient grains, true to the source and directly from the farmer that grows them with the most nutrient dense soil possible, then be sure to check them out at grainsandgrit.com/Teton. And be sure to tell them I sent you. And thank you so much to Grand Teton Ancient Grains for sponsoring this video. Okay, so now it is testing time. So because of what I'm testing, noise level, speediness of grinding the grains, and the temperature of the flour when it's milled, this is actually going to be done pretty fast because they're all kind of back to back. So I'm actually going to start with the impact mill first, and then we're going to go to our wondermill Harvest. Now with this, we're going to be grinding up in the theme of ancient grains. I'm actually going to be grinding up some korzon from Grand Teton Ancient Grains, and I'm going to be grinding up 1 cup each, starting the timer as soon as I'm putting the grains in, and then as soon as it's done, immediately going to be checking the temperature of that flour. Now, I do not have a true instant read thermometer, but this is super, super close, and it is my fastest one. So we're going to be using this thermometer today. So let's get started. Before I start this test, warning with your volume, because I'm not going to be adjusting the volume at all. So whatever you hear through a microphone, it may be a little jarring because grain mills can be a little loud. So wanting to give you a heads up about that. But we're going to get started. I have my 1 cup. Now with both of these grain mills, I do have to turn it on first and then add my grains. So I'll be starting the timer the minute I start adding my grains. So we're gonna go ahead and start up the impact grain mill. I'm gonna let it go for just a little bit so you can hear the level, and then grind these grains, and I won't be speeding up or editing that part at all. So let me make sure I'm prepared, and let's go. All right, so that's the impact grain mill. Now I stopped timing it. You notice I let it go a little bit further. That's to brush out, make sure any of the extra flour is out. So I let it go for a little bit longer, but ultimately that took 29 seconds for 1 cup of wheat berries ground at a fine, typical fine setting. Now let's check the temperature of the flour. Got to do this fast. So we got to 100.7 degrees Fahrenheit with me sticking it into that flour and feeling it. I will say it's just warm flour. It's not crazy hot or anything like that. But that was what the temperature I got with just 1 cup of flour. So you heard what it sounded like. 29 seconds to grind 1 cup of Corazon wheat, and the temperature was about 100.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's move on to the harvest. Okay, so now we have the harvest. So a few things about this. I do have to turn it on first and adjust my stones because I know I have mine at a coarser grind right now. And what I look for to get a more fine flour is I hear the stones to start squeaking. So you'll be hearing and watching me do that, and whenever I'm ready to add the grains in, start the timer, go from there. So this is what it sounds like when I first turn it on, kind of quiet. Stones are squeaking. And you know it's done when it gets quiet again. All right, so that took about a total of 1 minute and 10 seconds to grind 1 cup of Corazon wheat. So you can see the difference that makes. Now let's check this temperature real quick. I can stick it in here. I left it as a mound, so hopefully it won't mess with that too much. I will say touching it, it feels about the same temperature. I have a feeling it's going to be very close. Yep. Okay. Looks like it is settled at 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So like 1 degree cooler. Now that also might be because this is, you can see it's now open air. I will say from experience, I think whenever I'm grinding more flour in my impact grain mill, because it's in a closed container, there's more flour going through. It is possible it may actually be a little bit higher in temperature, but I'm only speaking from just experience of feeling the flour, but this also feels warm. It pretty much feels the same as with my impact grain mill. And I say this, why did I check the temperature of the flour? And that's because one of the biggest arguments of choosing a stone grind mill as opposed to an impact grain mill is people state that the impact grain mills heat up the grains too much where you start losing nutrients. Well, I just tested it and they pretty much came out the same. And I also can speak from experience from milling for over a decade that anytime I do feel the flour, whether it's from my harvest or my impact, it's kind of the same. Like it honestly feels the same. And do I really think it matters? No, I don't, because you know what I'm about to do with this flour? About to bake it in a 350-degree oven. So I don't think it really matters because I'm about to bake the flour anyway. So I kind of don't understand that argument because it kind of just doesn't make sense. Okay, so which grain mill do I actually prefer? So like I stated, I've been milling for well over a decade. So I know a thing or two about grain mills and I certainly have my preferences. And I own 5 grain mills. You don't need that many. So I have these two, the Nutrimill Impact. I also have the 1 Year Junior Deluxe, which is my manual grain mill. And then I also have a more of a corn grind grain mill that I got from Hacienda. That's more for whenever I make my masa harina, those type of things. Which one would I prefer? Honestly, with my needs, I have a large family. I have this YouTube channel. I am grinding grains a lot. So for me to have both of these mills, in a perfect world, I would want both an impact grain mill and a stone grind grain mill, because how it's set up in my house is I'm generally using my impact grain mills because it's faster grinding the flour. It's like half the time. And when I'm baking 4 or 5 loaves at a time, it's a lot of wheat berries that I'm trying to grind. And so it is faster, it saves me time, and it gets me that fine flour every time. I don't have to adjust anything. I just push a button and I get that fine flour. So for speed and convenience, I love my impact grain mills, but I also love my stone grind mill because I generally keep her, Miss Nancy, on a coarser grind because we love things like grits in our house, and she's already ready to go and set for my coarser grind. So when I'm ready to make those grits, I just go ahead and put that in, and I'm good to go. Now, obviously, if I had to choose only one, I am on a deserted island and they only allow me 1 grain mill, I would choose a stone grind mill because of its versatility, the fact that I can do coarse grains all the way to fine flour. And whenever I was in a rental for a year and I only had space for 1 grain mill, it was my harvest that I kept out for the versatility. So hopefully this was helpful, y'all, and gave you more information that many of y'all have been looking for to help you decide about what grain mill to welcome into your home. And as I stated earlier, all links that I've done, if I've done a review or how to clean it, all those things will be in the description box below. And if you actually want to see my video of advice I give you about how to decide what grain mill to get, that is this video up here. I highly recommend you watch it before purchasing a grain mill to help you guys out. And as always, I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.